The Game Schooler Podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Magic Mountain, our game of the week, discuss the hobby in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our High-Five Cooperative Games 2024 edition. Welcome to the Game Schooler Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, the esteemed Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
What's going on, Doug? How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. Very busy as things are keep gearing up, and holiday season and family get-togethers and school plays, pageants, and everything else that comes with this time of the year. Winter is rapidly approaching. I think it's going to be in the teens tomorrow.
Yeah,
in Wisconsin, so that will be delightful.
Unseasonably cold and dry temperature. It feels more like the middle of February than late November, early December. I don't want to counsel you on our board game podcast, but are you taking some time to enjoy the busy season, or is it all just work and efficiency building to live the charmed life that you live, Doug? Are you getting much joy out of your days?
Well, I enjoy myself, yes.
Good.
There is also a comfort in having a nice, full, busy day. Feels good at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Just as many times as it feels like, oh, that was a lot. At the same time, those can be great experiences as well and feel rewarding.
Yeah, and we had one of those days for our family recently where so I coach high school basketball, and so my family gives up traditional breaks of Thanksgiving and Christmas every year. We have a non-traditional schedule, but close friends of ours had us over for Thanksgiving. So thank you, Doug, for creating a very memorable day.
Oh, happy to do it.
Yeah, no, it was awesome, and I had some of the most delicious food I've ever had. I've never had a turkey that good before, so well done to you. Rad Dad is what I believe your apron said. So job well done.
Yeah.
Job well done.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So before we move on to some other awesome stuff, I did want to follow up. I feel like I'm an absentee dad that's away on business trips all the time.
Oh, no.
Because I have not checked in on Discord over the past week.
But no, that's a good thing. That's not absentee dad. There's a culture there. It exists. It doesn't need you. You've done your job.
I appreciate that.
That's a dad who's raised a really good child into a full functioning adult.
Yeah. So I did check in there. When you get to the Thanksgiving and holidays like that, and you're running to different families and things like that, I just didn't even check in. And then I checked in today, and I'm like, 178 things have happened since the last time I checked. I felt like I can't respond to all this stuff, and there are comments from several days ago. It's like I can't put a response there. I'm putting thumbs up and hearts and kind of checking in on that. But I'm proudly looking on in the background. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, there's a great community there. New people joining all the time. What I love about our Discord is the welcoming environment for when new people join. I love going into that introductions and just seeing all the people giving the thumbs up and the hello and the welcomes and all that. So it's good stuff.
Any follow-up for you?
Yeah, I have two things. One, I did not bring props to today's episode. Okay. So you won't hear any acrylic tiles going clink, 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 clink. You won't hear any dice being chucked in the background. You won't hear any cellophane getting crinkled. We're a podcast first. Leave the props for second, right? Primary audio podcast. But last week, Doug, I think I'm better at admitting that I'm wrong than you are. Not to turn that into a comparison game, but I'm much more open because I'm wrong a lot.
Yeah.
So these things I must admit. And you weren't kidding about shopping season concluding. Holy cow! I chided you about the deals, and I was like, "Come on, Doug, why are you getting people going here? We're trying to step back from the consumerism." But Black Friday, friends, That is the day after Thanksgiving in North America, in the United States.
Yeah.
And the deals around then that lead up into then, unbelievable deals to be had this last week or so. So, and I know I mentioned it last week, but it's about the third year in a row at least where this has happened. And
yeah,
so I know to save my gaming allowance
Black
for
month
next year.
Now.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts 2 weeks before
deals month.
Thanksgiving, and then you got Cyber Monday gets thrown in there, and then there's Cyber Monday 2.0, and there'll be something the following Friday. So there's going to be deals to be had, that's for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to talk about probably would have been better to address last episode, but in North America we had Thanksgiving this past Thursday.
United States. I don't think Canada does it. So I
They
misspoke,
should.
and then my mistake led to your mistake.
They do
Doug.
have a Thanksgiving. It's just on a different day.
But I love that you're not giving in. Go ahead.
I'm never wrong. The only thing that we can conclusively say based on the game that we played recently is that I have no idea who the first female astronaut was. That I did not know.
So wrong. The whole table did.
Yeah.
Right. We were all.
So anyway, Thanksgiving was a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to say, things that I'm kind of thankful for. This is my What's Awesome in Gaming, and I'm thankful for this show. I'm thankful for your friendship, Michael, and the fact that we get to play as many games as we do and hang out. The community that has popped up around this show has been amazing, and all the people that we've met and interacted with throughout this journey. It's been really special, and I just wanted to shout that out and highlight it. And like I said, maybe I should have done that last show, but enjoying the Thanksgiving holiday made me more appreciative and wanted to make sure I got it out there.
Oh, that's great, Doug. I have similar sentiments, not to get too sentimental, but my wife and I were sitting around the day after Thanksgiving and playing in Jaipur, and introduced that game to her just within the last month, but she's pretty darn good. And I don't win too many of those ambassador chips. I'll get one win, but I'm not often getting two. And all of a sudden, our 9-year-old just sat on her lap and started to see what was going on. And then the next day at a basketball game, when I got home, my 9-year-old says, "Dad, I beat Mom in Jumanji." And I said, "What?" "I beat Mom in Jumanji." I'm thinking, Jumanji? What board game? The game with the camels. Jumanji. I said, "Oh, Jaipur? Yeah, that one." So
sounds like my dad.
Well, it is just those moments, and we do talk about it, a couple times a year, but that is what's awesome in the hobby, is when you get that experience of playing a new game with somebody else, playing games with your friends, with your family, and just being able to spread that. For me, that's the sweet spot of this show, where my relaxation intersects with friends and family time in playing a game. That's kind of where the magic circle comes together, because there can be another side of it too, where it can be work. It's about the mindset that I approach it with, you know what I mean? And those are expectations that I think I set. And so we'll get into more of that in the School of Gaming, but that's what's awesome. Playing with friends, playing with family, and having some of those experiences. I think Doug's referring to the history trivia game that we both came in second because we were both playing some strong defense on the trivia there, and Doug's wife got the win. She knows more about trivia than either one of us combined.
Yeah, it was a Christmas miracle, Thanksgiving miracle. She was excited about that. But as far as great moments with family and kids gaming, just in what I was browsing, it seemed like there was a lot of listeners in the Discord that had similar experiences, and just for those of us that were fortunate enough to get some time off of work or some vacation days in there, even if it was just that extra holiday day, and you went back to work on Friday, that Thursday, people getting together with their families and trying stuff and playing things is really cool to see.
And hopefully you don't cheer for the same football team that Doug and I do, because that was a different memory in itself.
Well, it hopefully led to some good things. We'll see. Onward and upward. All right. So we got a Spotlight game this week. We're going to be talking about Castles of Burgundy. And specifically, this is a special edition which has the Vineyard Expansion. This came out in 2023 by Awakened Realms, the designer Stefan Feld. There are a bunch of artists, 1 to 4 players, 70 to 120 minutes, which I imagine is determined by the number of modules and expansions that you're throwing in. That's just for the base game. The most significant expansion to the Castles of Burgundy was created by Stefan Feld himself. Vineyard Expansion introduces a new type of tile called double hex tiles. Vineyard Depot made of hard plastic and a multi-level vineyard board. Connect vines of the same type and score extra victory points. Michael, what else do you know about this? Because I haven't got a chance to play this yet.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to lead with some of the caveats, and then we'll get into what makes this awesome and what I really like about it. If we're not going to talk a ton about Castles of Burgundy, because that was a game of the week. Doug, I'm looking for it. When was it a game of the week? Have we not done What?
Never.
We're not going to talk about Castles of Burgundy because that's a future game of the week and one that has made several of our high five lists. But the caveat is this is an expansion for a collector's edition. So this is like a $95 game. And right now it's very difficult to get a hold of. But I know there's a second printing that's out in some of the big box online stores. Some of the bigger online stores, sorry, I just made up a new type of friendly local game store there, will have this available. But in the Vineyards expansion, what it's doing, it's adding a second marketplace where you can draft tiles. And as Doug said, they are double hexes. And so there's basically this appendage that attaches to your main board where you can then stack your vineyards and your vineyard tiles, your double hex tiles. And what's awesome about it is they're built on little staircases. And once you finish a level, you get a bonus. So if you know Castles of Burgundy, if you've played Castles of Burgundy, you know that there's already like 9 or 10 expansions, right? There's a ton, and sometimes an expansion could just be an extra tile or 2 extra tiles. Well, this is almost like a standalone expansion that you would buy for $20 or $30 that would fit in another box that modifies the game in what I perceive to be a very enjoyable way, because now I have another puzzle that I can work on, so that if I miss out on some of those other pieces in the main Castles of Burgundy, there's still another part of my map that I'm able to build out. So maybe I didn't get the perfect sheep to be able to multiply my animals, or maybe I didn't get the tile that I wanted for my ships. But hey, I can go to the vineyard marketplace and get this extra double grapes that I got. Now look what's happening there. The other thing that's a lot of fun about it changes the whole points. Anyone who's played Castle of Burgundy knows that you could score a lot of points in that game. That's not a tight Reiner Knizia, if you have 18, you're going to win. No.
Yeah.
You got to get in the triple digits, and oftentimes up towards 200. And what the Vineyards expansion rewards you is there's like 5 or 6 different types of grapes, and you only play with certain ones based on player count, but it rewards you based on the ones that are connected. So if you imagine a double hex, like in a game Honey Buzz, and you're kind of sitting of how am I going to piece this together, but then it's also layering up in a staircase type fashion, that first placement is very important for your final placement in the last turn of the game. And I love the added puzzle with very few rules. If you know how to play Castles of Burgundy, you know how to play it well, you can just look at the Vineyards expansion, look at the tiles, look at the scoring, and be like, okay, I get it. I get how this works. And thematically, it is beautiful how it fits together. So it's one that I like whenever I get the collector's edition out. If people have played Castles of Burgundy before, I'm going to just add that right in and just tell them, hey, we're going to add this in. This is a fun expansion that I think you'll really like. So,
yeah, my fear is I will never actually play this expansion. Even though I own the special edition, And I've talked about this before with expansions in general, of just feeling like I'm not playing games enough to then, when I decide to pull out the Castles of Burgundy special edition to play it, like, even though you're saying that it's a simple rules add, my fear would be that it's not.
Yeah.
Right or wrong, and then just be like, I don't feel like learning it, or I'm not going to learn it in time, or it's going to be a thing where it's like, oh, why don't we play this? Everybody knows how to play it. And then it's like, yeah, but not everybody knows how to play the expansion, so we'll just play the base game. And then that'll be another 6 months that it doesn't get played.
Absolutely
with the
valid
expansion.
fear. Absolutely valid fear. And I'm not trying to argue your fear or talk you down off the ledge of that. It's what I enjoy about it, and it's based on player count. But I don't just get to buy any of the two of the double hex tile. I have to commit a dice to it. And so once a marketplace is set up for that, and the chips are drawn out of the bag, and I've added the board onto my main board, you could truly look down and be like, okay, I get how it works.
Are you getting an extra die?
No, I don't believe so. I don't think there's an extra die that's in. I think it's just in from round to round. I should have looked that up on the research. I know some folks will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I didn't have that in my notes, and I took notes right after playing it. This is one that I played Castles of Burgundy a handful of weeks ago at a board game meetup, and I got home. I was like, I just need to play this game solo. It looks so beautiful, but it's been sitting on my shelf.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, I'm going to try this expansion. And it was one added sheet in the rule book, and the amount of fun and joy that I got out of the added puzzle, which at the same time, if you and I played, you would probably beat me in the game and may not even draw a single Vineyard tile. Like, it really is one of those where commit to it and go, or just not play it at all, and you're still playing the base castles. So take that for what's worth. I don't want to get hype going and fear of missing out, but this is one that there's thousands of people that have backed this worldwide. Yeah. This is a game that is out there. They had a second printing because it was in such high demand from Awakened Realms, and since the Vineyards expansion comes in that box, I did want to just put a highlight on it because it's one that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, well, and I think it's one that there's certainly enough folks out there that love Castles of Burgundy and play Castles of Burgundy in their game group, and kind of one of those things of, we play that once a month type of thing. And if they haven't, give it a try. Certainly, what we talk about when we're talking about a game of the week is try it if you get the chance. And it is going to be an edition that shows up in a bunch of convention libraries and things like that. So it's, even if you don't buy it, it'll be available to try out, and certainly one to investigate if you already love Castles of Burgundy.
And then just two quick things on there too, and I mentioned it earlier, but thematically, Doug, the tiles stand in this little like vineyard-looking stand, like with ornate grapes, and it's just it connects so well thematically. And then lastly, I think why I really enjoy this, it allows me to play the game solo and to just add that additional play. And I know this is something so nuanced and maybe too niche within the hobby, but if I'm getting a game out and I'm playing solo and I'm playing a game all by myself and I'm going to play it 3 to 5 times over a 3-week span, having an expansion like this where the rules are so simple and I can get an additional 2 or 3 plays and have a different type of puzzle added into the game, man, that's next level stuff. So
awesome. So that is our Spotlight, the Castles of Burgundy Vineyard expansion. Before we move on, I want to remind you to sign up for the Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord, to join that awesome community we talked about earlier. Spread the word about the podcast if you like what we're doing. And if you have any questions or comments, reach out to us, email at gameschooler.com. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Magic Mountain. Doug, give us the stats.
All right, published in 2021 by Amigo. The designers are Jens Peter Schleiman and Bernard Weber. The art is by Clem Neuter and Annette Nora Cara. 1 to 6 players, 15 minutes, ages 5+, and this is going to be a children's cooperative game. In Magic Mountain, you want to move the sorcerer's apprentices down the mountain ahead of the witches, but you don't always know how the will-o'-the-wisps will make the figures move. On a turn, draw a will-o'-the-wisp marble. So you're going to draw, there are 5 colored marbles, and you're going to place it on top of one of the 6 starting channels and let it go. If the marble hits a figure, it will stop. Pick up the figure, and you're going to move it to the next open colored space on the winding path that matches the color of the will-o'-the-wisp marble. If you're moving a sorcerer's apprentice, you might want to do it quickly, because if the will-o'-the-wisp hits the same figure, you can move it once again. But you don't need to rush moving the witches, though, since you want them to move as little as possible. If a will-o'-the-wisp doesn't hit any figures on the way down, then you must move a witch of your choice to the next matching colored space. Once all 5 will-o'-the-wisps have been drawn, return them to the bag and start again. If you manage to move 4 sorcerer's apprentices to the bottom of the mountain before the 3 witches get there, you win. One of the cool things is that you can adjust the difficulty of the game by requiring more sorcerer's apprentices to get to the bottom before the witches. You can make it easier by having fewer witches or add both of those. So you can adjust the difficulty level there. The other thing is you can play the game competitively with each player or team trying to get their group of 4 figures down the mountain first. So one team would play the witches, and the other team would play the apprentices and work together as
Have
teams.
you done that?
I haven't, which sounds really cool, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But this is just we don't talk about a ton of kids games, and a children's game is one that we think is essentially going to age out eventually. And this one I think is going to be about 5 to 10 years old is going to be the range for this game. And once you get above 10, you're going to be maybe having a hard time getting it to the table with your kids. But in that 5 to 10 range, watching kids' faces light up while they're playing this game is truly something to behold and quite remarkable. And I've not seen a lot of games like that.
Yeah, lots of joy. It's one that we don't own in our house yet, and my 9-year-old constantly lets me know that we still don't have that game yet, Dad. And it is fun watching the pieces drop down the table, the elevated table, and kind of hoping that they're going to go on one side. You can see a common experience from an 8-year-old and a 42-year-old having the exact same facial expressions and experience at the same time. So, it's a kid's game that can be enjoyed by people of all ages.
Yeah, and for a better kind of description, if you're familiar with the game Plinko, it's essentially that type of a game. The game board is elevated, like Michael said, so the marbles will roll down these tracks in the board. It's interesting to me, you kind of touched on it briefly, but the idea of, I think parents, when they see this on the table, or whenever I've played this with adults, they start out a bit apathetic, but then before you know it, they start lining things up and kind of strategizing and saying, like, well, I don't know if this, all right, well, let's see, if we put it down this one, it might hit that one, I don't know. And they're figuring. And they get invested in it the same way that the kids do. And I think this is a really good game. I don't know if we've had a ton of these, but it's a great game for what I would call, or I kind of classified as, non-gaming guardians. Yeah. So if you have babysitters or grandparents, older siblings, an aunt and an uncle that come over, this is a game that will work with them if they do not play games. And it's a game that the rules are simple enough that your kid can teach them, and they're not going to be, every once in a while I'll say something to like my parents of like, oh, why don't you try this game with the kids? And it's like a memory game or something, and they, kind of shut down a little bit. This is one that has that excitement and ease of play that I think has a better chance of getting to the table and working well with non-gaming guardians.
That is interesting. I didn't even think of that. If it's set up on the table, though, there's no reason why a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old cannot lead the babysitter, the aunt, uncle, grandparent through it. That's a good point.
Certainly Michael mentioned that it's got awesome table presence. The components are solid. It's easy to get set up. You just unfold the board, and there's 3 plastic pieces that you put in the side of the board to make it elevated. The things to be aware of, which we talked about, is that it does have an age cap. I think 5 to 10-year-olds is the zone that this game is going to be a smash hit. However, I am interested or would love to try it competitively with older kids. So I think, if we're talking about after-school game club and you get kids on teams, I think this could be just as good as something like Gimme That or Taco Cat, Go Cheese Pizza, where they're going to get into it and have a completely different experience that I'm not expecting. When I say 5 to 10 is the zone. I'm curious to see, if my kids grow out of it, if this game will have more life on the shelf when I say, oh, kids, by the way, there's a co-op version, and we're going to divide, or a competitive version, and we're going to divide into 2 teams, and it's on. And I think my kids would have a blast, even my 13-year-old.
Yeah, you're trying to replace Crokinole at the World Series of Board Games with Magic Mountain.
Maybe.
Something like that, yeah. I just had a vision of when we were at Gen Con, we got back to our hotel room, threw on some television one night, and people were playing bags, sponsored by Johnsonville Brats, and it was the most intense tournament as people were throwing stuffed bean bags. I know bags is serious, so hey, if you're like professional bags and you're listening to our podcast, thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, 5 stars. Yeah, thank you. But Doug's trying to get Magic Mountain thrown onto the Bags Tour as a side event for kids, co-sponsored by Johnsonville Brats and Amigo US. It's fun, though. And, we don't often talk about games. I think Hammer Time was another game that we talked about that was in this same area, or Dragon's Breath, a Haba game where once it's set up on the table, it's just plain fun. Yeah. You can try to choose your alley, but once you set it and go, there's that lack of control, and all that you have to hold on to is hope. And then at the end of each turn, what I like about this game is the discussion that happens for what should we do next? Where should we go next? What do you think we should do? A game that by design forces that conversation all throughout the game with the layers of fun that we've talked about. I just think it's worth highlighting and telling people about.
Yeah. One of the things when I was making notes for this game that occurred to me is, Michael and I have a list of skills that we talk about every week and pull different ones off of there. And it occurred to me that this game is a critical thinking skill masterclass for little kids. And what I mean by that is, in this game, every turn, you can watch a 5-6-year-old kid process information, do problem solving, and then make a decision.
Yep.
And so they're going to process the information, looking at the board, seeing where things are. And then once they see where, what marble they have, what paths they need to go down, then they say, oh, well, there's witches here and here. How can I avoid them? And then they're thinking about that, and then ultimately making a decision on which path to put the marble down. and then seeing the results of that. And there's not a lot of games for kids that young that are making those type of decisions accessible, which I think is really unique. And to even have it in a flow like that, where it's not just, oh, okay, yeah, they're going to have to process some information, or, yeah, there's little problem-solving bits that pop up. But when it's a flow chart of a decision each turn, and you can see, my daughter being 6, picking up on that. It's like, well, I can't put it down on that one. There's a witch there, and I think that's pretty remarkable for a game like this to do that, which I think if you saw it set up on the table, you probably wouldn't think of it as being that type of game.
No, but you might think, what's this? And we were very fortunate to see this at a trade show at a time when this game had just been nominated for the Kinderspiel, for the Kids Game of the Year over in Deutschland. And so that in itself was intriguing. And it's a game that I feel you talked about how, what was the phrase you used earlier? Non-gamer guardians are able to play this game. This is a game with multiple hooks. This is a game that has kind of a fairy tale hook that can get you into the game. This is a game that has an award-winning appeal, so it gets the hobbyists into the game who want to try it. And then it just has a fun factor that kind of pops out, a little toy factor of when you see it on the table. So I think there's a lot of different ways to get into Magic Mountain, or Zauberberg as it was first released. And it's one that is memorable. You're not always going to win, so just be prepared for that as well. Sometimes those witches will get you.
Yeah, and this one did win the 2022 Kinderspiel des Jahres as well. So good, not only nominated, but did win the award.
We didn't know that at the time, though. We just knew that it had been nominated.
I thought it had just won.
Really?
When we played it, but I could be mistaken. But I'm never wrong.
We've already established that. No, you're not mistaken.
So that is our
Hey,
game.
Hold on. We didn't talk about skills. Even though it's a kid's game, we got to...
Well, I talked about problem solving, processing information, decision making. What do you got? What are you bringing to the table, Michael?
Yeah, I just wanted, you're right. And I talked about the group discussion. I guess we just didn't actually label it. We just talked about it. I think the group discussion in this is fantastic because it's in every turn. And what you talked about it with your youngest kiddo, is able to look at it and be like, well, I can't put that there. The witches will get it. And when you have that versus a 10-year-old who may be, well, if we do this, then that could happen, and then this could happen, so we better go ahead and do that. Yeah. You can see that type of group discussion with people that are playing. So
we didn't talk about a best fit, though, and I think that this can work in a classroom with the 15-minute playtime, certainly in a kid's free time once they learn how to play the game. There's nothing stopping them from setting up, getting going.
You'd have to be you're a braver teacher than I ever was, because the pieces in this, it would drive people who know me from when I was an educator. I don't do Play-Doh because of my 1 year teaching in an elementary school, having to scrape Play-Doh up every day after in our maker space. And I would feel that I would be staring, do they have all the pieces? Are all the pieces over there? So
they're big pieces. It would be hard to lose. And there's no cards in this game. It's 5 marbles and 8.
School? Marbles hard to lose in a school?
You might need to have extra marbles on hand. But
best fit is Doug's house.
Yeah. There's also one that I think you can get in your house and in your collection that kids could pull off the shelf and play themselves. They don't need a parental supervisor. Maybe a little bit better there. Your pieces won't get lost in your old house. Certainly parents and kids, and certainly in an after-school thing, I can see this working as well. Any that I'm missing?
No, I think if you are familiar with the game Magical Labyrinth, which was another Spiel, either nominee or winner from a while back that we've talked about a few times, Magic Mountain fits right in that same line where nice little toy components, but there's also a very solid game in that box as well.
All right, so that is our game of the week, Magic Mountain from Amigo Games.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we discuss the hobby, meaning the term, the hobby. So we're going to talk about the hobby. All right, Doug, who's going to lead us into this one?
You're going to lead the ship. I have literally no notes. I wanted to just fly in blind on this one.
Good. Well, I'm going to take this a little bit different direction than where my notes had started. But, you know, this is, I think, a really good example. So the hobby can mean a lot of different things, but certainly in board gaming, people often refer to the hobby as a thing, almost
air
as
quotes,
a proper noun. And the game of the week that we just featured, Magic Mountain, Kids Game of the Year of 2022, right now is rated a 6.8 on Board Game Geek. And, you know, you have some folks who've rated it as 6s because of random chance and hard to predict and strategize as well. Some folks who've rated a 6 that just say fun with kids, whereas I could pull a Kickstarter game that I have pre-ordered through Kickstarter or GameFound, and it'll be showing up in the next few months, and that's going to be rated as an 8.2, even though no one in the world has played it outside of a demo at Gen Con or Essen.
Yeah.
And so you get some of this inflation that I think happens when you cross the Rubicon of playing board games to being in the wilderness of the hobby.
Yeah.
And I think some of the distinctions when you're in the hobby, performance matters. There's almost a sense of how did I do in the game? How did I play? What are my thoughts of the game? I'm going to reflect and tell you about that game. And in some ways, that is great. That is why this podcast exists. Without that sense of people wanting to talk about games and to engage and experience games and talk about new games, old games. Oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? You might like this. You might like that. Well, if you didn't like that, you probably won't like this. That's part of the ingredients that make up this wonderful stew of the hobby. But also in there, anyone who's made a soup, you don't eat the bay leaf. That's just there to give it some flavor. You got to pick that thing out of there. And there are definitely things in the hobby that I think make it very challenging to explain what's awesome. And part of it, as I was just looking at the Board Game Geek page for Magic Mountain, it's like this is part of what I'm talking about in the next segment. So that's where I'll just start.
Yeah, there certainly is a level of, and it's a frustration that I have repeatedly, which is folks, an inability for people to contextualize the game for the audience that it was intended for. So in your example there of Magic Mountain, which is ranked as the 40th children's game of all time, the top 40 children's games, if you wanted to go out and get a children's game, that should be high on the list. And then people are putting in their reviews that it's random, you can't overly strategize. And it's like, this is not the Kenner Spiel des Jahres. This is not for experienced hobby players. This is a kid's game. And it's the same thing when people go and find something at a mass market retailer and pick it up off the shelf and are acting as if it's for the same audience that's playing Brass Birmingham.
Yeah.
Which is not, you cannot look at those games through that lens. Fast take that games. We talked about a game like Sausage Sizzle. It's like, there's a bunch of luck in that, almost entirely luck, and it can work out for you and it could not work out for you. Not every gaming experience needs to be the same. And when you're talking about the hobby, I mean, as a definition, you're incorporating, when people refer to that, they're referring to essentially any tabletop gaming or activity.
Yeah.
People are talking about whether that's a card game, a collectible card game, board games, painting miniatures, inserts, all of the stuff that goes along, whether gaming accessories and supplies. It's like all of that gets bundled together as a hobby. And I think sometimes maybe that bundling shorthand maybe is what contributes to the misclassification or the unfair evaluation of games because of that. Because it's like it's all supposed to fit into this trunk of the hobby. And it's like, well, it does. They're all adjacent, but that doesn't mean they're all part of the same thing.
Yeah, it's so broad. And so I just type, more and more with some of the terms, I'm not going to Google. I'll go to ChatGPT or OpenAI and throw in. And so at ChatGPT right now on, early December 2024, I wrote, for board gaming, what does the hobby? And then just hit enter. Didn't even finish the question, but it knew me. In the context of board gaming, the hobby refers to the broader community and culture surrounding tabletop games. It encompasses not just playing games, but also the collection, design, discussion, and appreciation of board games as a whole. Whoa, that's pretty good. And then it broke it down into game collecting, game design, community engagement, game appreciation, niche and indie games.
Yeah, we need to hire them for the podcast.
Oh, easy. We won't have any fans. That's not a popular thing in the hobby right now, Doug.
Well,
I did say ChatGPT. But for what, just this where Google wasn't really getting me what I wanted. Like, yeah, I need to go one level out broader, but it is all of those pieces that encompass it. And I think so at some point when an individual goes from, I enjoy playing board games to, I want to learn more about this type of board game. I want to learn more about the person that designed this board game. I want to go meet new people and play new board games.
Yeah.
I want to get more games from the person that designed that board game. At that point, you are in the hobby.
Yeah.
And I think that is unique to the tabletop gaming community, is that there's not an official moment of entry. You don't get a membership. You don't get a badge. You don't get a credential. You basically have a level of interest and passion that brings you into this beautiful hobby. And with that comes so many different types of people and games. It is a worldwide experience.
Yeah, I think it's the moment that happens is the second that you play a game or you're introduced to a game and you decide on your own, I'd like to learn more about that. Or
I think that's what I just said.
Yeah, but more in the way of like, I'm pulling it back to even simpler. More simpler of just the idea of like, I want to know more.
Yes.
The second that you say that statement, now whatever path that takes you on, but the second that you play a game and then you don't just say, oh, that was fun and move on. And it's like you go to a Thanksgiving and somebody pulls out a game and you play it and you're like, great, had a blast. And then you go home and figure, just continue on your merry way. It's the second that you say, I think I might want to look that up. Or that was a fun game. Or I want to add that. Or, it starts with that second, because the amount of people that, when we were talking about last week about the idea of being a brand or hobby ambassadors and things like that, it's like the number of people in my life that I can get together and show them the hottest new game, whatever it is, and we play it, whatever that new party game is, where it's just like just one or green team wins, whatever, fill in the blank. And then 95% of the people are just like, great, that was we had an awesome time. And then it's out of their brain.
Yeah.
They're not going to go home and research it. They're not going to go buy it. They're not, that to me is where that pivot point happens.
So my kids are in the hobby because they asked if we own Link City.
Could be.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was a game that Doug and I recently played with our family and had a blast. It was that hot party game that coming to a board game podcast soon.
Was that your oldest daughter that asked that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she is in the hobby.
She is in the hobby.
She's clearly in the hobby.
Dungeons and Dragons GM, DM has a group. They homebrew, do all that. And that's the thing that, we have another friend who's in the hobby who just plays Lorcana. I mean, he'll play board games with us, but he's going to Toronto and Atlanta and booking travel to Vegas to play Lorcana with his family. We have, another person that we know who's been on our show here who designs inserts. He is in the hobby. Neighbor up the street from me who designs board games. He's in the hobby. There's just so many different ways to be involved. And even what I love about, the last time I'm going to say this term, I hope, the hobby, is it allows for passions and interests to be investigated in a way in which you don't need someone's permission. All you need is interest. If I am interested in learning more about a type of board game, you know what? I can sign up for it at a convention, throw down $4, sit and play it and be like, so that's what a coin game is. At our regional convention, there were 12 people that were playing Cthulhu Wars, and I went to take a picture. I'm like, I don't actually have their permission, but this is pretty awesome. I don't think I'll ever play that game because one, I don't own it, and two, but someday maybe I'll just throw down $12 and be one of those 12 people. And they had like 4 of the tables at GameholeCon that were stuffed. It was massive. It took up a third of that of a room to play one game. And that goes all the way down to the people that hit people with foam swords and all those things as well that we don't necessarily cover thoroughly on this show, but maybe that's part of your experience in the hobby.
You sent it again.
I know. I was trying. I couldn't find a synonym for it. It's just so broad and so encompassing.
Well,
I mean,
and it gets
you paint minis. I play solo games. Go ahead.
Well, it gets confusing when there's a difference between like in the business of the hobby and in the hobby, and like that distinction too, where it's like whether you're creating content, designing, publishing, all an artist, like those that are actually creating and producing,
but those
stuff
require skills, and I wanted to steer clear of that because like.
But my point is that sometimes those terms get used interchangeably.
That's true.
To talk about those, and that's to highlight what part you're talking about is that separate side. The business is a completely other part of it, even though some people use those interchangeably.
And I think and I got off on a tangent there, so I'm glad you reeled me back in. But where an interest level can go to a dangerous point is where it turns into really putting up sometimes unintended barriers that don't allow other people to engage with the games at the same level, right? Because all of a sudden I now need a certain level of knowledge or interest to be able to engage with a type of game. Yeah. And that's where I think it can be kind of fraught within the hobby.
Well, and I think that's where it circles back around to what we were talking to open the segment, which is whether it's a myopic view of the hobby or a very narrow focus and a perceived expertise that then is hindering the thing that you say that you love and want more of, when you start putting up those walls and saying, well, this is no good. And it's like, well, okay, it is possible for somebody to like a game that you frown upon that also could love a game that you love. Like
Yes.
those two things can happen. So, but if you're too busy tearing down the game that you don't like, you may miss the opportunity to play the game that you do love with that person.
Yeah.
So
my dad had a saying, he'd say this all the time. You want to be careful of comparisons because you'll either be bitter or vain. And so, man, I can't tell you how many times, we've been around people having conversations and I'm like, oh, they really love that game.
Yeah.
Wow, the disdain that individual has for that game.
Yeah.
And that's some kind of that Magic Mountain rating. When I saw that, I was like, how can the 40th children's game of all time be 4,437? And so.
Well, those are some ideas of ours of what the hobby is or highlighting and when you get into the hobby. Let us know on the Discord what you guys think. If there's any stones that we left unturned, we'd love to hear about it.
And hopefully we didn't go too negative there. It's just...
Our negativity is always crouched in positivity, so
it
should be fine. Let's move on to the high five. If you're anything like us, you're constantly on the hunt for new games to try out. This week, Michael and I are going to be talking about our high five. I can do 10. I can do
couldn't
15.
Cut it to 5, man.
You got a full 10?
I have 8 that are so darn solid. And if you give me 12 seconds, I can easily pull another 2.
Because I think I've got about like 15 or 20. There's not a list that I can keep low.
Let's go to 10. Let's go to 10, and I'll come in at 8 because I can stand by my 8 all
and I don't think you'll be
day
disappointed. If my 9
long.
and 10 are not on your list, you won't be disappointed with them. I think you can jump in right away.
No, go ahead.
When was the last time we did this list?
Yeah, so we did cooperatives. I wanted to say episode 22, but that's off the top of my head. I usually go back and listen, but I chose not to this time because I wanted it to be somewhat fresh. It was episode 35, all the way back, 8/27/2021 is when that aired, August 27th, 2021. We had Luxor was our game of the week. Luck in Gaming was a School of Gaming topic, and Cooperative Games was our...
Let's see if I can pull up my list here. See if I still have it.
I'm at a full 10 now.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Let's see. All right. I'm just going to not on my list. Whew. 4 out of my 10 are on my list this time.
That's awesome.
So, for those longtime listeners know I'm a big fan of cooperative games, but my tastes have changed, and I feel like I'm more interested in unique cooperative experiences, and there are a lot of games that are very similar to one another. So trying to kind of keep an eye out for that. All right, what do you got for number 10 on your revised list, Michael?
Well, I lied a little bit. I'm going to come in at 9, so why don't you hit me at 10?
All right, my number 10 is Role Player Adventures, published in 2021 by Thunderworks Games, designers Keith Matejka, James William Ryan, and Peter Andrew Ryan. And this will be a common theme throughout my whole list, but the experiential aspect to cooperative gaming has become more appealing to me, and that's storytelling and not getting bogged down on mechanics and the idea of, okay, here's the bot system, and we have to do this step, and then it's my turn again. Getting away from that type of stuff. And Role Player Adventures, one of the things I really like about it is they've done a phenomenal job, and it's a huge game. It's a campaign game with a lot of different scenarios in it. But one of the things that I think is really cool is the way that the game tracks keywords and experiences that you've had and alliances and things that you've made throughout the game and how that impacts the story going forward. So if you happen to befriend somebody early in the game, that may have positive or negative consequences in future scenarios depending on who you run into. You know? And part of it is bias, maybe playing with with our buddy Dan, who does a great job of kind of GMing this game and
unbelievable.
And running
Dan
us
is
through
in Ulos. He's right out of the mythical world that Thunderworks has created. He joins us from Ulos on a weekly basis to run that campaign, and it is a ton of fun.
But that is my number 10, Role Player Adventures.
Really, really good pull. And one that certainly had just a blast playing with you and Dan, and one that also has some more content on the way for fans who like and enjoy that. Number 9 for me is where I'm going to jump in. I was just looking to see when we covered this as a game of the week. It was back in episode 81, and that's 5 Minute Mystery. 5 Minute Mystery is designed by Connor Reed and has incredible art from Cam Kendall and Connor Reed. Wiggles 3D Studio is their publisher that did it. There's a different publisher that I think put it out.
Spin Master.
Spin Master did a more mass market version, but real-time cooperative mystery game with this great little codex that you're trying to get the clues lined up in the right order based on kind of where they are in the room, so you can keep flipping cards and getting down through this mystery in a very, very crunchy time-based adventure, one that my family loves. And again, this one's ranked 1,907 overall and 580th in family. I think it's just a fantastic cooperative game that's different. It's not one I'm very good at. There are time-based games that I do a pretty darn good job of, but just seeing the symbols, I'm not as good at reacting to some of that as my family members are.
Yeah.
But I still have fun playing it, just kind of going along for the ride because you can feel the excitement and the enthusiasm in the room as the game unfolds. And we talked more about that in episode 81. That's 5 Minute Mystery.
All right. Great choice there. My number, and that was on my list last time. Or maybe the 5 Minute Marvel might have been as well. My number 9 is I'm disappointed because I'm not sure that there will be the expansion that I thought there would be with this game, and that is, and it couldn't be on my list last time because it was just came out recently, and that is Disney Animated. Episode 140, we talked about that, came out in 2023 by Funko Games and design team Prospero Hall. I've got another Prospero Hall game on my list, and I'm a little bit disappointed because there have been franchises and things that Prospero Hall has started and other people have taken over, and the versions that come out afterwards are not as good as the original ones that were designed by Prospero Hall. And this is one that I believe, does the side of the box say Volume 1 or something along those lines, that like, well, if it's got a Volume 1, there may be a Volume 2, but with Funko Games kind of being in flux, who knows if that'll happen. But Disney Animated is a cooperative game where you're trying to get the storyboards kind of built, the background, and put the characters in, and you need to get the right paint. Meanwhile, battling the villain of the particular movie that you're trying to complete. So if you're playing the 101 Dalmatians one, you are, Cruella de Vil will pop up occasionally and start trying to monkey with your plans, and does a really good job of you focused on your own thing, but also setting up your opponents or your teammates well.
The characters are synergized, so you can play your character perfectly, but if you do that, if you're too efficient, the other people that you're playing with might be too far behind, and then you don't win the game. It is a cooperative, unlike so many other cooperatives, where it's a team-based cooperative. You kind of have to go through the adventure together, and I don't want to say that you're forced to helping each other out, but the way that the characters play together and the way that the villains interact together is fantastic.
Yep. So that is my number 9, Disney Animated.
And I'll jump back to my number 8. We have crossover, and since we're talking about it, I'm just going to talk about Disney Animated is my number 4, and this is if you had to pick like a Disney enthusiast on the podcast, that would be Doug. So this is not one of my favorite IPs. And I mean that with all respect and kindness. People have different passions, different things, and so I was critical of it at first, and in that initial play, I walked away saying, I want to play every character. That game was there's something to that game that I need to come back to. And we played it with our buddy who plays a lot of games, and we won it. But then over the next month, Doug and I rotated through the characters and really tried to discover the game. And along the way, we actually took a few losses as we were playing this game in September and October of 2023. So we're talking about it. It's a wonderful cooperative. I think it is a hidden gem. It's one that I've had on my wanted trade list, one that I want to add to my collection. And the game's kind of at a weird place right now because who knows what the future of Funko holds. Sometimes I'll see the game for like $15-$16 and I'll think I should really buy that. But then it's like, why? So it can sit on the shelf. So it's an odd one that I really do want to add to my collection at some point, and I don't want to pay $80 or $90 if it ever gets to that point, but who knows if it will ever get another life in the hobby. It is a great cooperative game, even if you are not a Disney enthusiast. Just the way that the four characters play together is awesome.
Yeah. All right, so what's your number 8 then?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, man. My number 8 is Lost Ruins of Arnak Missing Expeditions, which we had as a spotlight just a few episodes ago. It is a cooperative game in the sense that it takes Lost Ruins of Arnak and turns it into a 2-player cooperative campaign game. And I just, not everybody is an Arnak fan. We covered this right back in episode 191, so I won't say a whole lot more about it other than fantastic cooperative.
Yeah.
If you like getting to make decisions and kind of doing the active bookkeeping on every single turn. And then the other caveat I'll throw in, if you play games with one other person a lot, this is a fun cooperative.
Yeah.
Really good challenges in there. It was just a great way to kind of experience the world of Arnak. So I love what Min and Elwyn and CGE did with Lost Ruins of Arnak, Missing Expeditions. Big fan of that one.
Yeah, no, great game, and always cool to see a Euro style or a strategy style game that gets converted into a co-op game. There's something that is really cool about that. My number 8 is one that I know some people it has not worked for them, but I really love the variety of it, and it does a great job of having that hidden information or what I can do and kind of, this is how I can contribute to the group, and that is Art Project or the Art Project. We talked about it in episode 154. It came out in 2023, published by the Op. And it's a game where you're trying to recover stolen art, and you've got your resources that are shared among the group, and you're trying to complete objectives to find out where the paintings are and the artwork is to then go collect it. And there's that push and pull of if I know some information that the other people on my team don't based on the card that I drew. And it's like you got a choice between two options and then saying, okay, well, I have to take the gas. Can I use the gas, or does somebody else need it? And somebody else is like, well, I can do this. That'll give us some gas. And trying to do that order without being able to communicate directly about it, and not in a way where it's forced. There's nothing forced in it, where sometimes when there's that lack of communication in a game where they're just like, you can't speak about it, and everybody's like, I have a really high number, and I can be very strong with this one. I'm very weak.
Do you have a gun to contribute to the heist? No. Okay, then we're going to go here. I love the Vincent Dutrait art and the different maps as well. Just
great.
Fantastic pull. Yeah, really, really good game. We're on number 7 now.
7, yep.
Is that right? My number 7 is one that's going to be our spotlight game in maybe even next week. So I'm not going to say a whole lot about it other than stay tuned, folks. And that's The Gang, designed by John Cooper and Corey Heath. It's cooperative Texas Hold'em poker. with a little bit of bank heist involved. And that's all I'll really say for now without spoiling next week's segment. Game that we were both fortunate to be able to bring home because we simply had good luck and stood in line for a few minutes at Gen Con, and one that I've shown to a few people and had a ton of fun playing. So that's all I'll say right now. Very different party-based cooperative game, The Gang, from Cosmos, designed by John Cooper and Corey Heath.
Oh, this fell through the cracks on my list. I had it on my Post-it note, and I don't know what happened to it because it did not end up on my list or my honorable mention. So it would have been on my list somewhere, but I'm not sure what I would kick off. So that's the hard part.
It's number 11 for you, Doug.
There you go. My number 7, we talked about all the way back in episode 3. Don't go back and listen to it.
No, don't.
But that is Horrified Universal Monsters. And this one, also designed by Prospero Hall, has some of the same things that I talked about with the Disney animated. Came out in 2019, published by Ravensburger. I love the first one. I've played a couple of the ones that came afterwards that were not designed by Prospero Hall, and I didn't care for them as much. But the first one, I think, is as good as a cooperative can be, of having unique characters and kind of turns a little bit of doesn't have that standard pandemic feel to it. There's a little bit more life behind it, I guess, is maybe what I want to say. But just an awesome game with great graphics and great theme that make you feel like you're in an old monster movie with the townsfolk with pitchforks. So that is my number 7, Horrified Universal Monsters.
That's awesome. Yeah, great game. One I haven't played in a while. Need to get back to it. We're down to the list proper now. Number 5 for me is Dwarf Romantic.
You should be at 6.
We're down to close to the list proper. Okay, there we go. Number 6 for me is Dwarf. Oh, I see what I did there because of Disney animated. Is Dwarf Romantic, which was a game of the week all the way back in episode 175. Dwarf Romantic also won the Spiel des Jahres back in 2023. All right, got those facts right. And it's got a game that it's been re-implemented by Dwarf Romantic Sakura, which I know nothing about, but am now intrigued. And if you want to hear more about Dwarf Romantic, go back and listen to episode 175. But here's why it's a great cooperative. You get these tiles that come out and you're working together to try to min-max and get a high score so that you can unlock other tiles. And every game that I ever played of that, I always felt like I was about to set a high score. And then you get to the end and calculate, and it's like, well, I really didn't do as good as I thought I did. Or, oh my goodness, look at the combo that bounced off there when that tile was placed down and closed off that area, and all of a sudden you just, I love how the scores multiply. And the other thing why this is on my list as a cooperative, I get helped out when I play this game. You know, this is one that I can play solo, but I enjoy playing it with other people because they will point out where I could place that better. And sometimes in a game that would drive me nuts, but because it's cooperative where our score is shared, I want you to tell me the better play. Oh yeah, no, you're right. If the train tracks go there, we will be able to extend our train longer and be able to tick off that high score multiplier. So Dwarf Romantic was a game that worked really well for me, and I think for us in the podcast, and one that I look forward to playing again.
All right, great choice there. My number 6 just missed the high 5 because I feel like it's one that I can play a handful of times a year, and then it's good, and I don't expect a bunch of people to love this game as much either. And so just based on the time factor, because it is a longer game, and that is Mansions of Madness, the 2nd edition. Originally came out in 2016, Fantasy Flight Games and designer Nikki Valens. And it's just a great, if you're looking for a long immersive experience with levels of role playing and unique gameplay, it uses an app to drive a lot of the heavy lifting, which is nice and convenient, and I don't have to keep damage counters on the monsters that we're fighting, and I don't have to remember what cards got pulled out and things like that. So the ease of play to even though there's a lot of components depending on how many expansions you have and things, it does keep itself moving.
Do you have a few expansions, Doug?
I may have a few, all of them, but it's like 5. And I actually do play with them. That's the difference. Unlike most expansions,
and paint them,
yes. But every game of this that I've played, there's always something that happens where little stories develop, where it's like you get caught in a bad part of the map and you're stuck over there alone, like just trying to fight, or your dice rolling is just not working, and then all of a sudden you got a broken leg and you're doing this, and I dropped all my stuff, and there's these stories that get created that I just love that experience that when that unrolls while you're playing. So that's my number 6, Mansions of Madness, the 2nd edition.
That's awesome. Do you know when you first played the game and who you played it with? Is it that memorable for you?
I'm not sure. Probably 2017, maybe?
Okay.
2018?
Cool.
It might have even been pretty close, because at that point they had come out with Descent, and we were playing that quite a bit, and that was kind of the precursor to having an app run things, and then when that came out. So I might have been an early adopter on that one.
Okay, cool. My number 5, which is where I believe we are on the list, is
correct.
Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. And as Doug mentioned earlier, don't go back, dear listeners, and listen to episode 3 because we were terrible. But maybe start at episode 9. Maybe by then we were much
dominating
better. We were 9 in. We knew everything about podcasting and board game journalism. We were real deal members of the media in the hobby by then on episode 9. But Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle is a phenomenal deck builder. This is just such a great experience where you can, if you enjoy that IP and you like the world of Hogwarts, you can take a character and over time, grow with that character. And the game starts off where it's like, oh, this is going to be easy. We're just going to go ahead and dominate this. We could probably get through this whole game this weekend. And then when you get into like the 3rd chapter, or I think they call them chapters, books, whatever it is. But when you're in the 3rd ones, this is impossible. How are we ever going to get to the end of this game? And the pace of it just brings players along very, very nicely. The Op is the publisher, designed by a team of folks: Sean Fletcher, Forrest Pruzant Creative, Cammie Mendel, and Andrew Wolf. But a really good little deck builder that, is still around, still on sale all the time. And it's recently been re-implemented by Avatar: The Last Airbender. Really cool system if you like deck builders and you want to have a cooperative adventure where your characters are helping each other and fighting off some baddies. Yeah,
a great choice there. Definitely in my honorable mentions, and one that I think does a phenomenal job of just teaching deck building in general.
Yes,
so,
number 11 for you.
No, that belongs to the gang. My number 5, we talked about, we revisited it in episode 157, and that is Marvel United. It was the very first episode we had, and like I said, we revisited it in 157. It is a game that has had multiple expansions, and branching into the DC universe as well in the near future. Came out in 2020. Simon and Spin Master, Andrea Chiravesio, and Eric Lang are the designers. What I really like about this game is the variety to be able to pick out different heroes, different villains that change the game without changing the simplicity of the core mechanisms and the way that it does the cooperative part, which is that you get to use the card that I just played and I will use the card that you just played in a timeline. And sometimes I love the ability to force players to help out one another, which is, oh shoot, I don't have, you're talking to your teammates and one of them doesn't have movement, can't get to a different space. And so it's like, okay, well then maybe I'll play this card. It's not the one that I could use to drop the hammer and have a really awesome turn for myself, but setting each other up in a way that keeps it going and working as a team. I love that aspect of this game. Truly cooperative in that regard. So that's my number 5, Marvel United.
Yeah, and it's my number 3. So I'm going to break from tradition and also, talk about a crossover right now and jump up. To add into that, what I appreciate about the game is the level of thought that has gone into Marvel United is the system, but I think where it encapsulates, and people would argue this, I know that we are both bigger fans of this game than a lot of others, but where Marvel United kind of encapsulates the Marvel IP, like Marvel Cinematic Universes, there was definitely a ton of thought that was put into that first game that is so far beyond just a standard game in a box. Those expansions completely change the gameplay. The playmat itself does a wonderful job of fitting to the game, where when you set the cards around, you could see the story and trace back everything. All of the different pieces enhance the game. They're not just appendages that kind of float and add in. I have not played a single expansion where I want, I don't really know. That one didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
Whether it was the Guardians of the Galaxy or the one with Thor, what's that one called? The Asgard.
Yeah, Tales of Asgard.
Tales of Asgard. The Spider-Man, and I'm not even a Spider-Man guy, but the Spider-Man one is fantastic. Marvel United gets so many things right in cooperatives. The setup turn, but then sometimes you might think you're doing a setup turn only to be like, whoa, because I ended on this tile, I'm actually doing an awesome turn. So not only am I setting up my teammate, but I also get to, rescue a few civilians here and take out a few thugs over there. The game works really well for me, and all the reasons that you named. There's so many different layers of fun to it as well.
Yeah, great choice for both of us.
While we're talking about who puts out a $20 game that also scales up to a $1,000 game and is fun at both levels? Point me in the direction of somebody else that's done that, because the $20 game that was released at Walmart, that was $20 this last week on Amazon, brand new, is a ton of fun, and then it scales all the way up for people wherever they are in the branch of the hobby who like Marvel to that $1,000 all in, so you can sit around and do everything, and that could be your only lifestyle game. So just encompasses so many different things that they've done there. That's what I mean by the level of thought.
Well, who else has a game that a character comes with 12 cards and somehow encapsulates a character and thematically makes sense? You know, so great game there. We got 4 more on the list, which means, and you've already done your 4 and 3, so you've got 2 left. I'm curious if the 2 that are on my list will have any crossover on once we get there. My number 4 I know will not be a crossover because you have not played it, but this one goes in the experience category, and that is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. One of the best experiences I've ever had playing a board game. Came out in 2015. Z-Man Games designers Rob Davio and Matt Leacock. I liked Pandemic. It was the first cooperative game that I played, and it was like, what is this? You can play cooperative, and like, all right, there's this mini puzzle here, and you got, people that complain that there's alpha gaming it, and somebody can just tell everybody else what to do, and it's that exists, and it's an older title, and maybe it's passé at this point. Still a great game, but Pandemic Legacy took that and to me it just elevated it to a whole nother level of experience and building off of one game to the next, and just phenomenal. So if you like Pandemic and you've never experienced or thought about that, and you have a consistent group, or your family loves Pandemic and you think that you can get it played, I think the most you would get, it's at least 12 games to maximum of maybe 24 in the box. So if you can get a game, 12 games played, great experience. That's my number 4, Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
What do you have for number 3, Doug?
My number 3, curious if this will be on your list. We talked about it in episode 101, or at least part of it, and that is Dice Throne Adventures.
Yeah, it's my number 2.
And so this is just another one. Every game, and starting with 4 through 1, a lot of it I have a hard time separating the emotional experience and sentimentality I have for the game and where I was when I played it and the experiences I've had, coupled with the gameplay and how I think they're actually unique and different. And certainly taking a game that uses a Yahtzee-style mechanism with some card play and adds villains that you're fighting against, but the way that the bots run and the way that if you're playing this 2-player like I did with Michael, where you can have one player being the baddie and the other player, being their own character, you were engaged the entire time.
Yep.
And it was just so cool to do those dungeon crawls and then do the big giant boss. And one of the few games, I think every one of the games that was on, from 3 down, has those high five moments of getting that dice roll at the right time or figuring something out. So that's my number 3, Dice Throne Adventures.
Yeah, and I'll add in that I was playing Marvel United at the same time that I was playing Dice Throne Adventures, and I think, one thing that Dice Throne Adventures really did for me was taking a new set of characters and really creating a world to put them into and feeling like I was the character known as the Shadow Thief.
Yeah.
And the more that I got to play as that character, and then, the beautiful thing about Dice Throne Adventures is the card marketplace at the end. Like, you are upgrading your deck in a way that just feels awesome. And I am invested in what other people are doing with their deck.
Yeah.
I want to see what cards you're adding. Ooh, that's really good. You got a samesies time too? What does that mean? What does that do? How does that work? All right. Good for you. And I feel like this game also has the right amount of difficulty where sometimes failure happens. You did not defeat the boss. No matter how you could go back and undo your last 2 turns, the boss battle did not end in your favor. So what do you do now? Very easy to save and reset as well. So went through this one with Doug, went through this with my oldest. We made it about halfway through, and very excited for the expansion that's going to be arriving here in the next few months as well. So this is my number 2, Dice Throne Adventures.
We like it so much we ran through it twice.
Yeah. With different characters.
Yeah.
And then I started a third time with my, and the seasons of life got a little bit busy, so we put that on hold. But about every 3 months, my oldest or I will say, we really should get Dice Throne Adventures going again. Yeah, we should.
Well, that says a lot for us when we have the amount of games that we kind of need to play and do stuff that we made time to play a campaign through twice, which if you have no losses, I'm pretty sure is 8 games.
Yeah. 7? 8. Okay.
I was thinking that there was like 4 dungeon crawls and four major bosses. I could be wrong, but that being said, that's 16 games at a minimum that we played to that one. So that says a lot there. My number 2 is sentimentally another one that's really strong for me, and I'm constantly amazed by this game and this system, and that is the unlock system. We talked about it in episode 89, and it's something that I probably play a new one with my daughter maybe once a month. We'll pull one out and go through it, or we'll get on a little kick and play 2 or 3 of them. But the amount of her and I have played a lot of cooperative kind of puzzle solving games, and a lot of those leave us feeling flat or feeling dumb, where it's like, I don't know how we were going to make that leap. And this game does such a good job of making you feel brilliant, and if you need a hint, not feeling like you're cheating and moving the game along. I've never had an experience in this game where I was like, oh, well, that was just dumb. I don't know. I don't follow the logic. I don't know what they expect me to do here. I've never had that. But I've had that in almost every other similar style game that I've played, where I was like, I was never going to get this. And then I kind of feel like an idiot. But this one, we just played one this past weekend, and we were just delighted by the way that this game continues to incorporate the cards and the app together.
That's awesome.
To do unique and different, unexpected things every time. It's like, oh, that was so cool. So that's my number 2, Unlock. I think it's probably great at 2, maybe a maximum of 3 players. But for a cooperative bonding and team building experience, it's a really good game.
Yeah, and just a little bit of housekeeping here. Unlock, we covered that entire system and that series of games back in episode 89. If you're interested, go back and check out that episode. Doug knows a ton about that series, and as you could tell by the enthusiasm in his voice, it's one that you continue to come back to and continue to have a ton of fun with your daughter, which is awesome. That's what this is about.
Yeah, we went shopping this past weekend, and we went into a game store, and my daughter's like, "Oh, do we have this one?" And I go, "No, that one just came out." And she goes, "We got to get it." I'm like, "Emily, we have like 10 more things that we need to do. We're not in a rush to get that one. We'll get that one when we need to." But
the patient father. That's good, Doug. And then one other housekeeping, because we just both jumped into Dice Throne. That's designed by Gavin Brown, Nate Chatlier, and Manny Tremblay. Art by Manny Tremblay, and the publisher's Roxley. And Doug and I are actively trying to become good and better friends with Roxley, especially with all things that they're doing. So I wanted to make sure that we give them a little bit of a we tie that one out properly.
All right.
My number 1.
Yeah, I will be shocked if we don't match there.
Game of the week next week?
Yep.
All right, I'm not going to say a whole lot about it then. Just this is an episode of teasers, but Return to Dark Tower is incredible. I'll save the rest for next week. It's Rob Davio and team over at Restoration Games. It might not be accessible for a lot of people just because of cost and some other things, but I know we got to have a heck of a show next week as we celebrate episode 200. And, this is all about try if you get the chance. I played this game for the first time at a convention. There was a players wanted sign, and this person brought this game in there, had luggage just for Return to Dark Tower, where the playmat and extra batteries and a phone charger in case his iPad died. And so I just, sat on a table and got to play it. And I felt like I was 8 or 10 years old again. I really went back to an area of nostalgia, and then just the game mechanics and the design. And we'll talk more about next week, but it's number 1 on my cooperative. I cannot see a game bumping it, especially just because when you include how the expansions add into that game. Plays solo, plays 2, plays 3. If you got 2 to 3 hours and you want to have an experience, Return to Dark Tower.
Yep. I will leave it at that. I think that's a good summary, and we'll save it for next week when we celebrate episode 200. Just a phenomenal game, and it does a lot of the things that I've talked about in the entire list of experience and ease of play and not a ton of rules, and just getting stuff set up, and does a lot of really good things. Just because I can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to recap our list a little bit here because, and then I know we might have some honorable mention, and you're kind of the cooperative guy, like if we had to label it. But what I really appreciate about the different games in the series of games on our list is the thought and attention that's gone into the design and publishing of them. This could be a Hall of Fame list of games. Yeah. And when you just look at, replayability is a term that gets thrown around all the time, but these are games that we've been talking about for the last 5+ years very consistently, off air and on our show. And I'm excited to see what happens in the next 5 years for cooperative games. There's some great ones out there.
Well, and there are great ones that didn't even make a list. I mean, in my honorable mentions, I've got Castle Panic and Micro Macro, Thanos Rising, Freedom the Underground Railroad, Burgle Brothers, Adventure Party, Marvel Champions, Fuji. Just a lot of awesome games out there that are messing with and changing the formula for cooperative games.
I had a 10-year-old one that we just played recently, but in my Marvelness, I didn't get the log plays. Is that called Marvel Encounters? What's the Upper Deck one that we just played?
Legendary Marvel.
And see, I get those confused. I couldn't even find it in my log plays. That was one on my honorable mention.
Yeah, so a lot of great games. Let us know what cooperative games you like. We'd love to hear about that. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And don't forget to join our Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. Next week, we're going to be having a blast. We're going to be talking about episode 200, celebrating episode 200, taking a look at Return to Dark Tower and kind of looking back and just reminiscing a little bit. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
Now, get out there and keep gaming.